So welcome. So we'll sit, and then I'll offer some reflections on, of course, what's happening in the community, and give some context for people who might not know, and then open it for you. And yeah, it's potent to see your faces. Let's sit together. Just letting gravity do its work on the body and the mind. Everything that happens inside us and outside us, and all the activity, we might look to see if there's any part of our being that feels like it's the bottom of the sea, protected. All of the noise muffled. If that's there, we abide. And if it's not, we love the noise to death. so much tenderness for this human condition. So my name's Matthew, and one of the ATS, on the ATS Teachers Council and Ethics Council, Grievance Council. And how many people are here for the first time? Okay. Yeah, so not just for new folks, but some people may not know. I want to share the email that was sent on Saturday, and just as a kind of warning of sorts, that I'm talking about. It's a difficult night, yeah, and it's. I'm glad we're together. I'm glad to be with you. Actually, a part of my heart really is. And it's a difficult night. So this was sent on midday Saturday. Dear Sangha, we're writing to inform you of the outcome of the investigation into Noah Levine's conduct and the future of ATS. We regret the delay and lengthy period of silence that contributed to uncertainty, confusion, and pain. We have worked hard to conduct the process thoroughly and in a manner that protected the rights of all involved, including strict requirements for confidentiality required by the Grievance Council procedures. Members of ATS governance have been deliberate and volunteered hundreds of hours to ensure the trustworthiness of the investigation. We retained expert consultants and an attorney to guide us. All of this has taken time. We ask for your understanding for the ways in which the process has been painful for you. Investigation. The ATS Grievance Council received allegations of sexual assault involving Noah Levine on March 27th, 2018. Pending an investigation, Mr. Levine was temporarily suspended from teaching at ATS on March 29th. Soon thereafter, Roberta Yang, an experienced attorney and investigator of workplace harassment, was hired to conduct an independent investigation of the initial allegation and other allegations of misconduct that surfaced shortly thereafter. Ms. Yang's task was to determine if the ATS Teacher Code of Ethics was violated by Mr. Levine and convey her conclusions to the ATS Grievance Council. The standard Ms. Yang used was the preponderance of evidence, which means she considered if the allegations were more likely than not to be true based on her evaluation of statements from witnesses and other evidence. Ms. Yang interviewed or offered to interview all affected parties and reached her conclusions independently and without any influence by ATS. Ms. Yang concluded that with multiple women, Mr. Levine violated the third precept of the Teacher's Code of Ethics, namely, to avoid creating harm through sexuality. That is to say, Ms. Yang concluded that based on her evaluation of the evidence she reviewed, the preponderance of that evidence showed such violations. These findings were carefully considered by the ATS Grievance Council, and recommendations were made to the ATS Board of Directors in consultation with an independent ethics consultant. The standard for evaluating a Buddhist teacher's actions are not the same as the criminal or even civil standards of proof. Spiritual leaders are held to a higher ethical standard than the public at large and higher than other community leaders. However, ATS's conclusion is not a finding of guilt or liability by a court. It is our conclusion based on our own evaluation of the evidence presented to us. Mr. Levine denied and continues to deny wrongdoing. At the conclusion of the process, the board decided to remove Mr. Levine from the board and from teaching at ATS. The board further recommends that he seek all necessary support to transform his understanding and conduct, especially as it relates to his relation with power dynamics. Firstly, to the women directly impacted, we wish to remain available to you and provide whatever support we can that you might find helpful. We consider this another critical moment to study the way that different treatment based on gender constellates in the ATS community specifically and society more generally. Events such as this have the power to shake one's confidence in the refuge of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. We hope that the pain of this moment actually leads us back towards the heart and that we might all find true refuge. The effects on the organization and ATS future. The effect of the controversy arising from these events has been devastating for ATS. While ATS has previously experienced precarious financial moments, this period has eroded core capacities of the organization. Fiscal impacts were immediate. A 10th anniversary fundraiser was postponed. A large foundation grant was returned because we could not meet our objectives. Other forms of giving contracted. Monthly expenses significantly outpaced revenue, and our savings have been drawn down. 4 board members resigned, a co-guiding teacher departed, and 2 affiliate centers, Boston and Nashville, are dissociating from ATS. And our executive director is planning to depart at the end of his contract period. Each member of our Teachers' Council has expressed a wish to dissociate themselves from Mr. Levine, to begin again and share teachings in a new form with students. During the course of the investigation, the Board of Directors, Teachers' Council, and Executive Leadership explored a number of financial models and collaborative arrangements that would allow ATS to remain a viable, healthy organization. We were unable to find a solution. With deep sadness, we announced that ATS will close the doors to its Melrose, Santa Monica, San Francisco centers on September 30th. Know that the impact of losing a spiritual community has been given every possible consideration. We understand that many of you have been Sangha members from the very beginning. Our commitment moving forward is to be available and be present for the grief or anger or confusion that may arise. Moving forward. While we have tried to navigate this time with as much skill as we have, we know that these events are a lot and land in different ways for you. To the extent that we can be of support, we wish to be available for you. We'll be holding community sessions in LA and San Francisco, and the teachers will use class time when appropriate to digest this. Please know that we're also part of the Sangha. None of this has been easy, and we're experiencing our own forms of loss. The refuge of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is supported by people and places, but is never dependent on a person or a place. Though ATS is ending, the Dharma, as always, continues. The ripples and resonances of goodness and sincerity continue. Our teachers and facilitators are actively transitioning to new offerings, groups, and spaces to ensure that former ATS communities across the country are supported going forward. In LA, Joanna Hardy announced the formation of the Meditation Coalition, which Mary Stankiewicz and Cheryl Sleen and some other ATS facilitators will be joining. In San Francisco, Vinnie Ferraro is in the process of looking to rent space for the Friday night class. Matthew Brensilver will remain accessible and is committed to serving the Sangha in a sustained way. Nashville ATS will continue in the same location as Wild Heart Meditation Center. In Boston, Chris Crotty is committed to ensuring long-term sustainability of Sangha in that city and on the East Coast. We will announce more details as they come. For the next months, Vinnie Ferraro's September weekend retreat will continue as planned, as will the New Year's retreat. The women's retreat, it will also continue as planned with Mary and Joanna, and will be held once again in Joshua Tree in January 2019. We will update you on all of the groups and group plans as they're developed, finalized. To our beloved community, we are humbled, we are heartbroken, and we grieve with you. Sincerely, the ATS Board of Directors, ATS Grievance Council, and the ATS Teachers Council. So I began sitting with this community in 2005, and did the Year to Live program with Noah in 2006, and then another year-long practice program with him in LA. And at some point, I think in 2007, he asked me to start doing some teaching, which I really hadn't been doing at all, and to join his teacher training group. And it's very likely quite possible I never would have been teaching without that, actually, and certainly would not have been, wouldn't be here. And so that's one of the many conditions that lead me to this moment, and the kind of tenderness and complexity of that. And for my part, ATS has been. I started teaching the first week it opened in Hollywood, and it's been the longest running institutional connection for me. And so I've been teaching a weekly or bi-weekly group for at least 10 years now with ATS. What am I here to say? First, it's to say sorry. Yeah. And we associate that word with something we say when we did something wrong. Yeah, this is different, but we can still say sorry. Yeah. And we can still recognize the pain of all of this, and the pain of making some decisions rather than others, and a kind of acknowledgement that there was just no dukkha-free way out of this labyrinth. Yeah, and that harm, pain was part of that, and it's very hard when we actually look at the different forks in the road, and we know for sure that each one contains its measure of suffering. Yeah. And I'm sorry that it is that way. To say sorry means that I am here to listen and to hear you, and that's not just now, but actually having time to actually make myself available to talk one-on-one with people. And to listen means to be actually willing to feel the heart of another person. This is what real listening is. And I'm willing to do that. And I can imagine the range of feelings that people have. The nature of the kind of dharma relationship of practitioner, teacher, student. It's a very, I think of its, I think of its basis as love. Like that's the texture of it. And sometimes that love makes it difficult. We sort of feel like love is incompatible with rage or grief or fear, yeah? But, I don't feel that way. And I feel like, at least at this moment, it's my job to, to bear whatever it is in your hearts, yeah, and to know, for you to know that I can do that, yeah. I had wanted to, not just me, to give the Sangha more, more autonomy. When you take away the autonomy of a person, of a community, that's bad. It's like my aspiration, like in this process, was to I hoped we could provide some sort of choicefulness to the community, some choice point, some way of actually putting something in your, in the hands of the community. What do you want to do? Yeah, and I feel like there's a certain, just regret and pain that it didn't actually feel possible to do that, and that all of this is dropped at one time in this very kind of top-down way. And I understand, am very, sympathetic to some of the responses of anger or confusion about the kind of opaqueness with which the process proceeded and the decisiveness of the outcome. That's a very, very bad combination and catalyzes a lot of feeling and understandably a lot of anger for some people. And so, I don't know how much to get into it, but I'll just say a couple words that it was about, if it were only about money, it would be radically irresponsible not to come to the community and say, this is the need, this is the need just to pay the rent or whatever. It's like, you can't make that decision, preemptively, like without actually asking, what do we want? Do we want this? Yeah. But it was more than just money. It was a kind of the sort of core capacities of the org failing, and also a recognition of the centrality of Noah in the vision of this org. Yeah? Meaning, and not that all of that needs to be disavowed, but just actually the engine of this machine was fueled to a large extent by the grandness of his vision. And the people, who were on the board and teachers' council, ethics council, actually didn't share all of the grandness of that vision. Yeah? And then there is also this sense of a certain kind of a need to acknowledge that harm, this stuff has like real consequences, and some sense of a symbolic need, yeah, to let something else rise out of the ashes. So I'm here to listen and learn, and I want to respect all the different stakes of people's hearts in this. It's like we have our own particular investment in this. Our hearts are at stake in different ways. Yeah. And in events like this, I feel like they resonate, meaning like the event actually impacts and causes like those resonances in our own heart, but it resonates with our health and our wounds. Yeah. It resonates with our health and our wounds. So we find our health, we find our integrity, we find what we care about, we find what we cannot abide, we find like the no of love. Yeah. And events like this also there's this reverberation with what is unfinished in our own hearts. Yeah. And it's not to say that all the wisdom is in the health and there's no wisdom in the wound, yeah? But we do our best to actually mine the responses for the wisdom. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, we do what we can to mine the whole range of responses for like where is wisdom? What can I trust? Because this is echoing like in a lot of different ways in different parts of our hearts. Robert Thurman said one time, kind of joked, is like all this talk of practice, and said like, when is the concert? Yeah, right. this is the concert. Yeah. You know, that way in which the teachings, like, they're just maybe vaguely hypothetical, you know, and then all of a sudden something gets very real, and it's like, oh, this needs my wisdom. This needs my compassion. Like, it really needs it, yeah. And that kind of shift of the heart is meaningful. It's important. And you know, the truth is that part of my attraction to ATS has been that I've actually felt like, as a community, we kind of knew, maybe more than others, this is the concert, yeah? And that's very touching, and that's how I want to practice and the context in which I want to teach. So, in closing, I'm here to maybe lend some of my confidence in the heart. You know? That refuge is supported by people and places, but never dependent on people or places. It would not be refuge were it dependent in that way. And that maybe in some way, we can actually find this kind of refuge of the heart. I got a call this morning from one of the leaders of the kind of insight movement who had just learned about this and knows our scene, and said, he just said, like, well, you know, there's so much goodness that it's so much goodness there, like just in the Sangha, that it won't be just one phoenix rising, but many. So as I open this up, couple things to hold in mind. First, that just be sensitive to the impact of your words on others. Yeah, like speech is so fundamental. At some point, like I think there's some Buddhist maxim, like if you can't be mindful, just make your practice careful speech. That would be enough, yeah. And that doesn't mean that we have to cut the edges off of our feelings or sanitize everything, but actually just to know that the words impact others. Yeah, we're in a kind of relational field. And and know that you will have opportunities to speak one-on-one, and so it may be that certain sentiments actually are left, best left to a conversation that we can have one-on-one privately. Yeah, and I do want to hear you, and does this seem okay for people to talk in this way? Yeah?
Matthew, how much does it cost per month to keep this place open?
I don't know the finances well, but it's something like maybe $12,000.
And you don't bring in close to that much?
We've been. I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know that it's appropriate to get into the details at this moment. But we've been sort of like riding the edge a little bit, and sometimes in the red, and support. Some of it is we're actually giving money to the central organization, but then what they're also supporting us in times when the money isn't, when our bills would not otherwise be met, and so yeah, it's expensive. It's expensive. Yeah. Please.
Well, I just want to express that I think people here are very much here for you too. It can't be easy being out there, and I just want to express the gratitude for being vulnerable and being available. So thank you.
Yeah. Please. I haven't seen you since you gave me that gorgeous. Yeah, thank you.
I think the fact that the truth came to light is crucial.
Yeah.
And the consequences have been enormous for the teachers, for the Sangha, for the organization, for everyone involved. But time has come, right? And I'm grateful for the process that looked at it and acknowledged it and made it public. And the consequences are heavy, but that's life, right? What I want to focus on, that's a huge reality to focus on, and we face that reality every day in the real world. Some of us more than others. I want to focus on the gratitude for the people here. And the people here are my neighbors, are my long-term clients, are my friends, but mostly people from the neighborhood. And the first teacher I sat with here was Vinny. The second was George Haas, who I feel like helped save my life. And E. Beckman, also a huge gift. And you and Jean are Mondays, Monday nights for a long time. And all the guest speakers that have come here and who've opened up my eyes to truth and pain and grief and love. And you are one of the teachers who have really opened up the love part. You're one of the kindest, most generous people I've ever met. And I know that things will go on, they'll be different. And Michael Taft, can't forget him, impermanence, right? He's the guru of impermanence. When I read that email, I was like, okay, Michael, thank you for what you've taught me. This is it. This is the true test. And so, of course, there's so many feelings of rage and anger and denial and, you know, wanting to bargain, like, we can raise the money for the center. All of those feelings, right? That's grief. Those are all the different stages of grief. So my goal is to allow myself to deal with the reality of what grief is. And part of it is resilience, too. We will go on. Sangha does not depend on one person. One person does not define an entire community, right? We have to acknowledge that people are fallible and there's been a lot of harm done. But we're strong and things will evolve. Yeah, thank you so much for being part of this beautiful community.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it would be helpful to hear, I think an effort has been made to be as transparent as is sort of appropriate in a very sensitive situation. I think you've had more visibility. It might be helpful to hear from you. Do you believe the process and the outcome have integrity?
Yeah, do I believe the process and outcome have integrity? Yeah, I think one of the very few things I feel good about is that we were careful and I do think we were the process was fair and thorough and respected the different people involved. Yeah. Please.
And then, do you know yet if you have any plans to continue a group in the city, or is it just kind of too early to tell yet?
So my, am sort of practicing along with you all, in ways and feeling into what's right for me and I, what I said in that letter of feeling a kind of sustained commitment to the Sangha is real, and I don't know exactly what form that takes, but that's real. And to the extent that I'm, wanted in the city, I'll be in the city. Yeah, and okay, how does that actually look, and what's the most effective way to structure that? Is I'm like sitting with myself, but I promise not to retreat to the East Bay and where I live, and the commute is short, but yeah, please.
The theme of being grateful and a little hopeful. I know that you mentioned that it feels like Noah is the engine of Against the Stream, and I can see why for a lot of the teachers, because he brought you in and he trained you. I've been coming here for 4 years, and what I want to tell you, he has not been the engine of ATS for me at all. The engine of ATS has been you, and has been Vinny, has been Chandra, has been Jean, have been the people here that have helped us and led us. And he may have had that role historically, but as I sit here, you guys, and you in particular, that's the engine. And I don't know what that means going forward, but perspective of maybe some of the newer Sangha members may just be very different of this community and what drives it than someone who's had 13 years working with Noah. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and feel, yeah, feel like my own person, my own relationship to the Dharma, and this, you know, my commitment in being here on Mondays has been to try and create a certain kind of culture, even if just for this hour and a half, yeah, and that it feels, yeah, I feel as, you know, authentically expressed in this context as really anywhere. In some ways, you folks know me, you know, in some respects, you know me better than my, you know, partner and parents and you know, like really there's a way in which you is actually my life. This is like an aspect of my heart that you know, and so I'm glad that that's felt supportive and like an engine in some way, and yeah, and there's this reality around the actual functioning of the larger org that actually exists to support whatever happens here, yeah, and provides the kind of opportunity for us to be together in this way that we come together, and for that there's a lot of people involved, and Noah quite principally one of them, and so that's part of just the governance decisions. That's part of it, yeah. And I appreciate what you're sharing. Thank you. Yeah.
So I've been sitting with this community for, I think almost 15 years. It's a long time. Before we were APS.
Yeah.
And I had, you know, a lot of personal concerns of becoming APS. And a lot of that was around Noah culture, which wasn't just Noah. And, you know, I feel I've reflected a lot during this process just on my own ways that I feel responsible myself for moments that I did or didn't speak up when things culturally felt uncomfortable. And I can't imagine a way that you would hold any guilt that we don't all hold. I don't see, you know, this is my own problem in life, but I don't really like see you as having more power than me.
How dare you? How dare you?
It gets me in trouble. But, you know, there's moments where I reflect on my own actions and lack of action, totally outside of these allegations, but just around issues of culture. And that's been meaningful to me to reflect on that and think, really make some intentions around, I won't do that again. I won't be silent at that moment, and I won't sit in that room and consent if I'm not comfortable. And I think that for me, one of the, I don't want to put anything extra on you, but like, you know, one of the ways that it felt okay for me to move forward with ATS from urban dharma back of the bus to ATS was really you as a teacher, and I remember when we were sitting over at Jewish Home, and you were like really perseverating for a couple months there on the like talking about the like goal, the sort of life goal of making yourself safe for other people, and like that particular teaching like was so confusing to me. I was just like, what are you talking about? But then understanding it over time, you know, and understanding it only as always in the context of what does that mean for me in terms of who I want to be as a person. And then really, you know, I've only ever felt safe with you as a student. And I honestly, I can't think of another teacher I can ever say that about. And I understand that you're a human, and I'm sure you fuck things up.
For the second time, Harmony, how dare you?
But, you know, I feel like I was able to hang in there with this community largely because of you as a teacher, and I feel so grateful for that. And for all the complicated ways I felt about this space, I feel grateful that we got to have it and your role in it, and you know, and just the confidence that I have in my own practice from all this, from the 15, you know, all the years of all the different ways I've felt about the ATS and not the ATS and whatever. And I guess there's something exciting about knowing, like, I still don't know how I feel about any of this, but like I know how I feel about my practice, and I know how I feel about the community, and yeah, I mean, I feel, I guess, grateful for every moment, you know, that we've gotten to have together.
Thank you. Yeah. As I was walking today, just practicing a little bit, what came to mind was that kind of that phrase of like, oh, somebody's living on borrowed time, yeah, and just feeling like. Yeah, in our own way, no matter what our health or age or anything, we, all things, are living, you know, on borrowed time. And yet, here we are. Yeah. Let's just sit for a couple minutes. Just feeling our Sangha. honoring all that's good. Grieving what's passing. Waking up to our integrity, all of our yeses and all of our nos. Sensing perhaps that aspect of our being, of the heart, the bottom of the sea, vulnerable and protected. So just a couple words. There are, conversations and explorations and plans for what form the various leaders, sangha leaders and teachers, share teachings in a different incarnation, and all of that will be in conversation. And please look out for times where there will be opportunities to talk with me or other people one-on-one. Like I just look forward to being with you in that way. And the kind of opportunity to take a step back and actually gather for like one of the biggest cause, perhaps, this Earth, the climate march on the morning of September 8th. So you have info about that. We'll keep talking about that, but actually you may want to mark that as a time for us to be together. Your donations are appreciated and needed. So thanks for being here and hanging with it. Being in Sangha. Okay, see you next time.